Christine, when you're ready to come over, why don't you raise your hand and then I'll bring you over. I'm not sure if you're probably in a bad area for connectivity, but just raise your hand. Oh, there you go. And Christine, can you hear everyone okay? No, you're muted. Unmute.
How about now?
No, I can't hear you. But you can hear us? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Oh, I heard something.
Does it sound like Christine?
Yeah, you're really quiet. I think we might boost up the.
Yeah, I'm trying to call in on my phone.
Yeah. Okay. There's a
With
lot of
my
background noise
computer.
happening too. So.
All right, I'll work on it.
You were muted and I was muted. So try again. Will you maybe turn the thing up just because it's, yeah, turn it back up like 1 or 2.
Do I sound any better?
Yeah, you're a little delayed, but we can hear. I think once things quiet down a little bit, we can hear you.
All right, great.
Testing. Is this any better, Di? Any better at the back? Okay, I'm gonna go a notch or 2 more. Okay, testing. Any better? Yeah, a little bit better. We can at least hear it up here now.
What?
We could hear it up here when I was testing at this point.
Okay.
The gentleman in the front row can hear us. That's the important part, right?
Okay. Madam Mayor, we're ready back here whenever you're ready.
We'll bring the regular assembly meeting to order for April 17th, 2023. Mr. Smith, will you lead us in the flag salute, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Hale, would you do the land acknowledgement, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. We would like to acknowledge that the city and borough of Juneau is on Tlingit land and wish to honor the indigenous people of this land. For more than 10,000 years, Alaska Native people have been and continue to be integral to the well-being of our community. We are grateful to be in this place, a part of this community, and to honor the culture, traditions, and resilience of the Tlingit people. Gunashish.
Thank you, Ms. Hale. Madam Clerk, will you call roll, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Wall,
Present.
thank you, Ms. Wall. Mr. Smith,
Here.
Ms. Treem,
Here.
Ms. Hughes Candies,
Here.
Ms. Hale,
Here.
Mr. Bryson,
Present.
Walalki Doc,
Hyundai.
Ms. Kladashevsky,
Here.
and Mayor Weldon.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So next we'll go to our special order of business, and it looks like we're honoring the 2023 Arctic Winter Games participants from Juneau and Douglas too. We can't forget Douglas. So can we have everybody come on up? Come on up and just line up here for now. Here, I can come out. All right, so first I'll read a proclamation, and then I'm going to ask everybody to introduce themselves and say what sport they did. You don't have to say how you did. So this is a proclamation for the Arctic Winter Games participants from Juneau. Whereas the Arctic Winter Games is a circumpolar sport competition for Northern and Arctic athletes, and whereas the games feature both traditional indigenous events and winter sports, and whereas the 2023 Arctic Winter Games was held in the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo in Alberta, Canada earlier this year, and whereas the games are typically held every 2 years, although due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this was the first competition since 2018. And whereas over 300 Alaska athletes, coaches, and staff traveled to the 2023 games, including about 20 from the Juneau area. And whereas Team Alaska finished second in the 2023 games by winning 145 total medals and 58 gold medals. And whereas the City and Borough of Juneau Assembly is proud of the contributions that Juneau athletes made to Team Alaska's overall success in the games. Now, therefore, I, Beth A. Weldon, Mayor of the City and Borough of Juneau, Alaska, on behalf of the City and Borough Assembly, do hereby issue this proclamation honoring and thanking the athletes, coaches, and board members from Juneau who participated in the 2023 Arctic Winter Games. Can we have a coach or someone to give the proclamation to? Okay, who's oldest? Okay, we'll start with you. Just tell us your name and what sport you did.
My name is Minta. Oh, okay. My name is Minta Schwartz and I played hockey.
My name is Matthew Quinto and I did Arctic Sports.
Kyle Whirl, Arctic Sports. Ezra Elisoff, Arctic Sports.
Leaf Richards, Arctic Sports.
My name's Jordan Bennett and I've done the Arctic Sports as well.
My name is Lyric Ashenfelter and I did the Arctic Sports.
My name is Sonny Maison and I did futsal.
My name is Nathan Blake and I did Dene Sports.
And you can't get off this easy. What was your favorite part of the Winter Games? This is your time in the limelight.
Thank you. Thank you.
I see some of you are wearing your medals. Thank you.
The people was my favorite part.
People too.
I'm gonna have to say the same thing. I made a lot of friends.
Making a lot of friends and enjoying the games.
Definitely like the whole experience and especially the people.
Mostly meeting the people. Also meeting the other athletes from the other contingents. And then I got to be a coach as well. So seeing my athletes participate was special.
I'm going to give the same answer of the people, just meeting all the different contingents from the different countries.
It was really cool to meet people from different places.
All right, anybody have anything else to add? Okay, so you have to do the assembly handshake. So you start with that end. You shake everybody's hand. One at a time.
Congratulations. No, you got, congratulations. There you go. Got the ring. Thank you so much. Yeah, congratulations. And thank you. Thank you. Congratulations. Thanks for being here. Congratulations. Yeah, thanks so much for doing that. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for being here and doing it. Wonderful to see you. Thank you.
See you. Thanks. Yeah.
You guys want to line up, put yourself right in front, and someone can get a picture of us behind you guys, because we're your support behind you.
Yes.
So come in the circle.
No, you're good. We're on a little bit of a step, so you're good.
We're not that short.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
And while you're welcome to stay and listen to this lively meeting, you can sneak out quietly.
They're leaving. We'd like to leave too, but.
Madam Clerk, will you give instructions for public participation?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For those of you in the room that might wish to testify, there is a sign-up sheet at the back of the room. We did not have anyone sign up in advance to participate via Zoom today. And when you do sign up, please sign up for one topic per line. So if you're going to speak on multiple topics, put your name, what the topic is for one topic, and then the next, so on and so forth.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that brings us approval of minutes. Ms. Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move approval of the 2022 November 21st regular assembly meeting minutes, and I ask for unanimous consent.
Any objections? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. Manager's request for agenda changes. Mr. Manager.
No agenda changes. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. And Ms. Wall, since I have to keep looking to the right, which I'm not used to, holler if I don't see your hand. Public participation on non-agenda items. Madam Clerk. All right, looks like we have one for non-agenda. Ms. Hart, would you please come up? Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Carla Hart. I am from the Back Loop, and I am here again before you to talk about cruise tourism and the lack of city leadership on managing cruise tourism and the impacts of cruise tourism. Today, about 20 residents were down at the dock to greet the Norwegian ship that came in. And this is a handout that we passed out to a lot of the passengers, some crew, some Juneauites that came by. We really need the city to take leadership, and having a city tourism manager is not enough. The city tourism manager is working on things like the Green Cruise Corridor, which is studying how to think about doing something in the future. We need action now, and we need action in Juneau. We need leadership. We need to find what the right size for cruise tourism is. We need to not have the city making policies that commit us when 50% of Juneau wants the impacts of shore excursions concentrated and 50% of Juneau residents want them spread out. And you're making policy decisions that impact without any real leadership. So again, we're going to be down there at the docks. Residents are welcome to join us. We've got some big banners and we're going to be meeting cruise ships and we're going to be striving to educate the community and the people coming in that not everybody here is happy with the situation with cruise tourism. We would love to not have to do this. So if you could take some leadership, we're happy to participate. Let's get this figured out, please.
Any questions for Ms. Hart? Thank you for your testimony. Okay, that's the only non-agenda item I see. I don't see any hands, so we're moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any public requests for consent agenda changes other than ordinances for introduction? Seeing none, are there any assembly requests for consent agenda changes? Assembly action, Ms. Gladysevsky.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the consent agenda and I ask for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Ms. Gladysevsky. Any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda is moved. So that brings us to public hearing. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is ordinance 2022-06, version B, AR, an ordinance appropriating up to $2,340,737 to the manager for Juneau School District Special Revenue Fund deficits and current year student activities, funding provided by general funds.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager.
This ordinance would appropriate up to $2,340,737 of additional outside the cap funding to resolve current and prior year deficits in the school district's special revenue funds, as well as a request for new wrestling mats for middle and high schools totaling $80,000. This appropriation would allocate funding for the purposes outlined in the attached supplemental document. After consultation with the Alaska Department of Education and Early Development, JSD has removed their request for funding of summer school in 2023, which has been determined to be an instructional cost that must be paid for inside the educational funding cap. This request does not correct the school district's operating fund deficit of $620,400 on June 30, 2022, as CBJ already contributed the maximum local contribution inside the cap. I'm advised. You bet. Thank you. I'm advised that JSD intends to correct that issue with its FY24 budget request. School funding is complicated and there are three concurrent funding processes that the Assembly should understand as it acts on this request. First, this ordinance has been moved to public hearing. Second, the legislature is contemplating increased base student allocation as much as $1,200. The results of that deliberation will not be known for another month or so. Third, the school district budget for fiscal year 24 has been received in accordance with law. In that budget, JSD has to anticipate many factors, including an assembly decision on this ordinance, action by the legislature, enrollment, and staffing costs. Last, the assembly should be informed that due to the increase in the value of real property in Juneau, funding Juneau School District instruction to the cap in fiscal year 24 will increase CBJ's allowable appropriation by approximately 2.3 million, or about an 8% increase over the FY23 level. Based on some feedback from Department of Education and Early Development on summer school funding, Juneau School District staff have adjusted this request. This request was reviewed and approved by the Juneau School District Board on January 10, 2023. Request was reviewed by the Assembly Finance Committee at the March 1 and April 12, 2023 meetings. I recommend you adopt this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I don't see any public signed up for this. Mr. Hannah, please come up, state your name and area of town you live in, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Dave Hannah. There we go.
Start again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Dave Hanna, Back Loop Road. I'd just like to recap some brief history here. I think we all know decade or so ago, we had a pitched battle over whether or not we should build a second high school. And some of us pointed out that it would be only a few short years before JD High would easily accommodate the whole group. At that time, I kind of went on a tear and I tried to point out to the school district that it wouldn't be many more years before they didn't need all those elementary schools either. And that instead of deciding how much they were going to spend on fixing which ones, they should be deciding which ones they could close. Well, the future's here. That's where we're at. We don't need all those schools. We don't have that many students. We're not going to have that many students. It's not anything wrong that this district's doing. It's a national, global demographic. The student population is dropping. The school district has got their head in the sand. You know, it was only a few months back that Mr. Manager sent them a memo telling them that they had hard choices coming, that they had to be ready to make some difficult decisions. Have they embraced that? No, they have not. They keep doing the same thing and they keep coming back and asking for more money. Now, the way I understand it, as it is right now, your hands are tied. You can only do so much. You can approve or disapprove. I think you need to see if there's some way you can amend our charter, or there is some way the assembly can take stronger control over what goes on with the school district and force them to make hard decisions. Force them to tell us how much it actually costs to run each one of those schools, how much we would save if one of them was shuttered, how many administrators we would no longer need, support staff, what have you. We never get true numbers. We just talk about what we'll get from the state for X amount of schools, but they never give us true numbers about what we would save. So once again, I think you folks need to investigate what it would take for you to take stronger control over what the school district does, because I feel they've proven themselves to be a failure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanna. Any questions, Ms. Hale?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for testifying, Mr. Hanna. I'll phrase this as a question. Are you aware that there is a joint school board assembly facilities committee that has met twice now and will be meeting for the remainder of 2023, looking at some of the questions that you've raised?
No, I'm not. And I would heartily encourage you to do the deep dive. And, you know, every time we get an audit from the school district, all we get is, do the numbers add up? But we don't really see what the numbers are spent on. So, thank you.
Any further questions from the assembly? Thank you, Mr. Hanna. Anybody further in the audience? Nope. So I guess that comes Ms. Hughes Candies.
Madam Mayor, can we take a quick 5-minute break?
5-minute recess. We'll call the meeting back to order. And we'll wait for the late assembly members to make their way to the dais. Anyway. All right, so that brings us to item 15, and we are at the assembly level right now. Mr. Bryson, do you want to start us off?
With a motion, Madam Mayor,
Yes, please.
I move that the Assembly adopt ordinance 2022-06 BAR, an ordinance appropriating 2.340738 to the manager for Juneau School District Special Revenue Fund Deficit in current year student activities funded provided by general funds, and ask for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. I'm going to hand my gavel over to Ms. Gladys because I have an amendment.
Madam Mayor,
Thank you, Ms. Gladys. I like to support the school district as much as I can, but in this particular case, I think some of it lands on the school district. So what my motion will indicate is to fund FY 2022 deficit and FY 2023 deficit, but only half of the FY 2021 deficit. And the reason for that is while you guys spent the money and it's honorable what you were trying to do, at the same time, you knew you were running yourself into the red. And I think you guys need to take some responsibility for that. So my request plus the $80,000 for the high school activities, wrestling mats, so that $80,000 for the wrestling match comes to a total of $1,920,882.
so Madam Mayor, your motion is to amend section 2 to include the number. Could you say the number again?
$1,920,882, which includes the $80,000 for the wrestling match, which might get amended further.
Could I get that number just one more time?
$1,920,882.
Thank you.
And just because it's specifically about this number, I want to ask about the language in section 2. It says up to. I understand why the title says up to, but shouldn't the section 2 say not up to? Mr. Watt, or
I think they have to match.
I don't, you appropriate $5, not up to $5. Mr. Watt.
Deputy Mayor, that's correct. So in the title, in the drafting, I believe the words up to were added, anticipating that the assembly may choose a different number. In the body of the ordinance, the only discretion I can think of, if there was a legal reason, perhaps from Department of Education on appropriation that would legally require the manager to reduce the amount. But in this case, since the funding is outside the cap, the words up to probably are unnecessary.
So it's unnecessary in section 2. Yes, Mr.
That's correct.
Okay, so anyway, so Madam Mayor, your motion is?
My motion would be replace.
Here it is.
The words up to $2,340,737 to the manager, the sum of $1,920,882.
Okay, you understand the motion, everybody? Okay. Comments on the motion? Is there objection to the motion? Ms. Huskadis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'm going to object to the amount of this amendment. I understand where Madam Mayor is coming from. But I think based on conversations with the school board, examination of the deficits in our last meeting, it's unsatisfying, and I have a lot of feelings towards the state and their shirking of their responsibility of funding education. But at this time, I think financially, we are in a position to, if you want to look at it as bailing the school board out, then we are in a position, or maybe a better way to phrase it is to help the school board. But I do think we're financially in a position to do that. So just looking at the size of this versus the size of what was requested, I think I'm going to be a no on this amendment.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I would like just to hear from the school district or something what this reduction of, it looks like around $400,000, how they would, what that would mean to operations, or how would they deal with that? So if someone from the school district could answer, that'd be appreciated.
Do we have someone from the school district to answer Mr. Smith's question? Dr. Weiss.
Good evening. Thank you. Your question, Mr. Smith, we really don't have resources. It would come out of fund balance. These are accrued deficits for those three specific funds, two of which are community schools and Rally, which are community programs that we facilitate. And we have a few years ago, handful of years, needed to put operating funds into those programs, even though they weren't our K-12 programs. And of course, transportation is a K-12 program that's underfunded by the state. So our only access to resources would be our operating fund, which would mean our fund balance, which there wasn't any in June. So we'll have some at the end of this school year, but this will eat up part of that.
I have Mr. Bryson and then Ms. Wall. And Wahal-Gidak after that.
Madam Deputy Mayor, is this question time or statement time?
It's well, this is objection. There's a motion on the floor. So this is about whether you support the motion or don't.
I absolutely support Madam Mayor's motion. While I think this is a significant amount of money, $1.9 million that is being given on top of to help the school district. And so it is supporting the school district. However, Madam Mayor is correct. If we just say no harm, no foul, and every time the school district runs into a deficit that we take care of it real quick, then there's that lack of responsibility that could be created by us not putting some limitation. There's not enough money to do everything that everybody wants to do. We know that. If we continue to move forward as if there's an unlimited amount of funds, eventually we are going to run into the end of the cliff. Transportation is a good example. I've been asking to stop crosstown busing for 5 years now. While I know it sounds silly, even at the school district's own numbers, that would have been a savings of $200,000 to $400,000, which is some part of where we're at with $800,000 of transportation money. Every small amount adds up, but yet we're not making even those small steps. So I absolutely support Madam Mayor. We're not leaving the school district holding the bag by any means, but at the same time, we do have to say there is a limit, because this is the largest ask that the school district's ever done of the assembly. And the whole pattern has been next year is going to be a larger ask if we just keep going in this direction. Somewhere we have to draw fiscal responsibility. Thank you for the time.
So I have Ms. Wall, Wahal-Gidak, Mayor Weldon, and then Ms. Treem. Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I will also object to this amendment. I was thinking about the comments that Mr. Hanna gave at the beginning about needing more control over the school district. And I really think that's kind of the wrong way to be looking at things right now. The issues that our community faces right now, and especially our schools and school districts, are not easy and they're complex. And I think instead of exerting more control, we need to be, better partners. We're all going to need to be working together to kind of address these challenges. And so I think this is a small way, a one-time ask that we can funds and just be better partners and supportive of our fellow board.
Paula Gidak.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I also will be a no vote on this. I think during our last meeting of the Committee of the Whole, we had some good suggestions for how we could look at cost savings going into the future. We talked about Raleigh community schools and what those look like coming in under our fold under CBJ. We have a lot of joint facility meeting coming up to look at what that means for cost savings. And I think that our school district right now is already operating on a shoestring budget. And we already know that when we stress the school system out additionally, it just trickles down into our kids. And so I will be a no vote. I think we have some really good solid ideas for ways we can move forward with cost savings. And I'd like to see those come to fruition, but I think underfunding right now is not the solution.
Mayor Weldon.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate everybody's comments tonight. But, you know, this is our first part of our funding for the school district. We're going to also look on whether we funded the cap, which I would assume that we're probably going to do that. And we're also looking to fund above the cap, which is another 2.5 million requests. So, and this particular item is not in our budget. The other two are already baked into our budget. This is not, so this comes out of our fund balance. And if you recalled on Wednesday, when we looked at their fund balance, they're approximately $400,000 over what their school board says they should have. So that's where the fund $400,000 would come from. And you have to remember that, I don't know about you, but I didn't receive a ton of emails on this one way or the other, but I have received a ton of emails saying lower our mill rate. And this $2 million request is 0.4 of our 0.4 mill rates. So just, you have to remember where the money's coming from.
Ms. Treem.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. So I had originally intended to object to the original ordinance just to make a comment. And I think that this is actually a really great place for me to do that. And I appreciate where Madam Mayor is coming from. And I agree with many of the points that she and Mr. Bryson made. Let's see what it tells us when we first saw this in Finance Committee, but it's been a while. And since we first saw it in the Finance Committee, I have worked to try to understand where these deficit numbers came from. And it's been very difficult to do. To follow, what is available online in terms of school board budgets and school district audits. And frankly, I never really did get the numbers to add up. And I appreciate that COVID was a lot. And I think the school district did an excellent job of serving our community through COVID and was entirely focused on that. And I commend them for that. I think I'll object to this amendment and will vote yes on the ordinance as a chance to kind of clear this slate. I do think that we as the Assembly have a duty to provide oversight on how taxpayer money is spent. We don't have control, and I do not want control over how the school district spends it. That's an entirely different elected body, and they face an entirely different set of challenges, and I don't want to take those on. But I do want us to be able to say with confidence where that taxpayer money is going. I think it's gotten a little muddled in the recent years, and I want this to be a chance to just reset that. And that I think that we do need to have a holistic conversation going forward about the outside the cap spending. And if it's at a level that meets our community's needs, or if it needs to change. But we'll do that in future Finance Committee meetings and in future years. And I'm sure that conversation is going to last for a very long time. But I will object to the mayor's amendment tonight, and we'll vote yes on the ordinance just to have that chance to kind of reset us and get us back to a balance point. I would object to the wrestling mat portion if I knew I had 5 friends who would join me, because I do think that is it's setting a bad precedent process wise. I think it set a bad precedent process wise when that request came to us during the budget budget process last year, but we voted no on that. And this is just kind of a backdoor way to get around that no that we said last year. But I know that I'm not in the majority on that, so I will remove that objection.
Any other comments? Mr. Bryson?
I just wanted to clarify something. We hear that the school district has cuts or on a shoestring budget, I think was one of the comments. Their budget was $86 million. And even at the superintendent's, the student numbers were flat, but then we're coming into a $96 million budget for 2024, $96 million for the same amount of students. I might not consider that shoestring. We are funding them moving forward. That's why I think that we can support Madam Mayor's small reduction so that we're making changes moving forward instead of going backwards. Thank you for the extra time, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Any other comments? I'll just make one. I'm going to support the mayor's motion. Ms. Treem said it, she could never really get the numbers to add up. And I feel that it's our responsibility to make sure the numbers do add up. I a lot of sympathy for the school board. They did amazing work and all the staff during COVID. And all of a sudden came a request for $2.3 million above the cap that wasn't there before. And I think it's our responsibility to make sure we know where the money is going. And I don't think I can here. We can always give them extra money later when they come and give us the proper numbers. We're going to be at this again many times in the next few months. So any other comments? We'll call for the roll. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. This is for amendment number 1 to remove the language up to and to replace the amount with $1,920,882, which includes the wrestling mats. Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Walaki Dog.
No.
Oops. Ms. Wall,
No.
Ms. Treem,
No.
Mr. Smith,
No.
Ms. Hughes Candies,
No.
Ms. Hale,
No.
Mr. Bryson,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Gladysevsky.
Yes.
Motion fails, 3 yeas, 6 nays.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're back to the main motion. Ms. Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to propose an amendment to the motion. I would like to, well, I'll explain it first and then I'll say what I want to do. What I'd like to do is take that 80,000 for the wrestling mats and take that down to 60,000. I've heard various scenarios about what it will cost, and I'm thinking that perhaps that 20,000, if it is actually the 20,000 more and they need 80,000, that can come out of other parts of the activities budget. So my amendment would take that line in section 2, the second line that starts with sum, and it would be sum of 2,320,000, $737 for Juneau School District Special Revenue Fund. And that 20,000 would come out of the wrestling mats.
Madam Clerk, are you clear on that? All right,
Yes, I
everybody
am,
else
Madam Mayor.
hear and understand the motion or the amendment? Any objections? Seeing none, go ahead, Mr. Smith. Seeing none, that amendment passes. Oh, sorry. Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question for the maker of the motion. Can you, you mentioned the extra 20,000 coming from the Student Activities Fund. Is that what you said? And did you confirm kind of how that would work and the timing of that? I know part of the reason we were putting it this year was to, in the FY23 budget was to get that moving. So just curious.
Okay, we'll take back the motion passed to answer this question.
Okay, super. Thank you, Ms. Wall. And I am sure I don't have the right language. It's just that in the meeting the other day, we had a long discussion about where basketballs come from and where soccer balls come from. And there's funding for those various items for all the school sports. And so I have heard that maybe we don't need the full 80,000 for wrestling mats. And if we needed more than the 60,000 for wrestling mats, my thinking is that that funding source could make up whatever that difference might be. But I don't have the precise name. And by calling it the activities fund, I'm probably leading us all astray.
And perhaps we might not even have to say the source of that particular fund.
That's right, we don't.
Yeah. All right, back.
I'll
Ms.
maintain
Wall,
my objective.
Okay, so you had an
I'll
objection.
maintain my objection.
All right, just so you know, you're a little delayed when you're speaking, so. Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So for the amendment by Ms. Hale to limit the wrestling mat amount to $60,000, Ms. Hale,
Yes.
Mr. Bryson,
Yes.
Ms. Hughes Candies,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
No.
Ms. Dream,
Yes.
Ms. Wall,
No.
I saw the lips moving to no. Wala Akira,
No.
Ms. Gladysevsky,
Yes.
and Mayor Weldon.
Yes.
Motion carries 6 yeas, 3 nays.
Okay, now back to the motion as amended. Any objections? Seeing none, I will object for the purposes I stated before. I still think some responsibility has to be for why the school district did great during COVID. They also spent money that they knew they didn't have, and I disagree with funding all of that. So I will object. So Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for ordinance 2022-06 version BAR as amended by amendment number 2, Mr. Bryson.
No.
Ms. Hale,
Yes.
Ms. Hughes Candies, Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Dream,
Yes.
Ms. Wall,
Yes.
Wala Akira,
Yes.
Ms. Gladysevsky,
No.
and Mayor Weldon.
No.
Motion carries 6 yeas, 3 nays.
All right, that will bring us to item 16. But before we move on, thank you to all the school board members and Ms. Weiss, or Dr. Weiss and Ms. Owen for being here tonight. Item 16, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is ordinance 2023-19, an ordinance authorizing the manager to convey approximately 4,814 square feet of tidelands located on a fraction of Lot 3, Block 51, tidelands addition adjacent to 1,000 Harbor Way to 1,000 Harbor Way LLC for fair market value.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager.
The owners of 1,000 Harbor Way LLC applied to acquire city property and tidelands under and around their existing building in order to make major structural and architectural improvements. Doxon Harbor's board reviewed this application at the August 25, 2022 meeting and provided a motion to advance this application. Assembly reviewed this application at the November 21, 2022 meeting and provided a motion to authorize the city manager to negotiate the disposal of city property. Planning Commission reviewed this proposal of CBJ property at the meeting on January 24, 2023, and passed a recommendation that the assembly approve the disposal. Fair market value has been determined by appraisal to be $24.62 per square foot. I recommend you adopt this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I have no public signed up for this ordinance, so we'll bring it to the assembly. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the Assembly adopt ordinance 2023-19, and I ask for your unanimous consent.
Any objection? Seeing none, that motion is adopted. Number 17, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is ordinance 2023-20, version B, an ordinance amending the duties of the Systemic Racism Review Committee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager.
This ordinance expands the scope of the Systemic Racism Review Committee to include CBJ policies and procedures in its review in addition to ordinances. It also gives the committee the ability to select legislation rather than being required to review every ordinance that is introduced at regular assembly meetings. Assembly Committee of the Whole discussed these proposed changes at its March 6, 2023 meeting with participation from members of the SRRC. I recommend you adopt this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I see no public signed up for this, so we'll bring it back to the assembly. Ms. Treem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the Assembly adopt ordinance 2023-20B and ask for unanimous consent.
Any objections? Seeing none, that motion is adopted. Item 18, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is ordinance 2023-21, an ordinance authorizing the manager to enter into a lease of city and borough property located on West Douglas along the West Douglas Pioneer Road to iRide Alaska LLC for the purpose of offering guided electronic bike tours.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager.
The owners of iRide Alaska LLC applied for a lease of city property along the West Douglas Pioneer Road located near the end of North Douglas Highway. Their request is for commercial use of the property for guided electronic e-bike tours. The Assembly Lands, Housing and Economic Development Committee reviewed this request and forwarded to the Assembly for discussion. Assembly considered this lease as new business at the February 27, 2023 meeting and forwarded it to the Assembly Committee of the Whole for additional review. The Committee of the Whole reviewed this application at the March 6 meeting and adopted a motion supporting the manager to enter into negotiations for a one-year lease, including renewal options with the original applicant and to draft an ordinance for introduction. I recommend you adopt this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I do have several people signed up for this one. First, can we have Mr. Carnes come up? Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, hello, my name is Wayne Carnes. I live out in North Douglas. Mayor Weldon, members of the Assembly. Excuse me. Please put your community of outdoor users first as you consider commercial e-bike tours on the Pioneer Road. Our first of many cruise ships have arrived, very important to our local economy, but at a cost to the locals. I've read City Manager Watts and iRide's memos, and I want to point out that while iRide states seeking to share the beauties of our community sounds nice and altruistic, that's not what the tour is about. The tour is about making money, and that's fine and all. But while my property taxes are skyrocketing, somehow the tourists seem to be more important. Over the past several years, I've had to give up areas in the summer to avoid the masses. Downtown, I haven't been there in years. Mendenhall Glacier, that place, I don't know if you've been out there in the summertime. You can't visit there. Hiking to Mount Roberts Cross, that's another mess. Whale watching, Well, you got to be really careful because you might get squished by a whale watch boat. Hiking trails, the easily accessible ones, all have guided tours on them. Helicopter noise, can't avoid that one. Eagle Crest, about to lose that. And I had an interesting conversation with a city employee about Eagle Crest and talking about the impacts of tourism. And the comment that I got as well, Wayne, you can just go somewhere else. Please don't add the Pioneer Road to the list of tourists in indebted areas. Give the hundreds, if not thousands, of local users that use the Pioneer Road a break, please. Just say no to commercial e-bike tours on the Pioneer Road. Please, I'm begging you, give us a break. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Carnes? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Paul Dislover. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Paul DeSlover and I live in North Douglas. I sent a letter to all of you, but I'm not sure all of you had a chance to read it, so I'm going to read it. I'm writing regarding the use of e-bike tours on the Pioneer Road in North Douglas. I am opposed to the request to do so by iRide Alaska LLC for a number of reasons. For one, in their written appeal to the Assembly on March 3rd, 2023, they made a number of assertions regarding, quote, impacts on other users, unquote, that are factually incorrect. For example, they stated that, quote, the benefit of selecting the Pioneer Road is that it is a 20-foot wide road allowing all types of users to comfortably pass by one another without having to stop their current activity, unquote. In actuality, the safe, usable, and currently used width of the road is on average 12 feet. There are a few short segments that are as wide as 13 or 14 feet, but nearly half of the 3.6 mile distance is only 11 feet wide. Additionally, both shoulders that extend the overall surface width to between 16 and 17 feet are non-compacted, sharp shot rock of varying dimensions and sizes. These surfaces are unusable for vehicles, bikers, walkers, and runners. Considering the narrowness of the usable surface, there is a good chance one user or another will be forced onto these potentially dangerous shoulders without much warning. Furthermore, in the iRide application, they state that, quote, this road offers long sight distances, taking away the surprise factor for users, as they can easily see one another for a long distance, unquote. Again, this is factually incorrect. While there are a couple of spots on the road that give a viewing distance of approximately 500 to 700 feet, a majority of the 3.6 miles does not do so. There are 10 steep hills spread over the distance that make it impossible to know if there is another user a short distance away until you crest or nearly crest the hill. Considering the fact that local residents very often walk, run, ride 2 or more abreast, or have children and or dogs that scatter across the entire width, it would make for an unsafe situation. This is particularly true since iRide Alaska is catering to, quote, those who are aging or otherwise unable to pedal a regular bike, unquote, and who consequently may not have the agility or skill to safely ride an e-bike on a narrow, hilly road. Additionally, the Pioneer Route has—
Mr. DeSlover, I need you to wrap it up. You can wrap it up, do a final comment. Just don't read the rest of your letter.
Additionally, the Pioneer Road has been seen as has seen a 10-fold increase in usage since the start of COVID epidemic, when local folks were seeking alternatives to two-way single-lane trails. In the spring, summer, and fall, residents have looked forward to the road for allowing individuals, groups, and families a venue to recreate. Having a tourist attraction.
Let's call that the wrap-up spot. I can't
Sorry.
let you keep reading the letter. I needed you to wrap up, but that's okay.
Oh, sorry,
So-
I didn't understand what you meant.
Any questions for Mr. Dislover? And it is in your email box. Thank you for your testimony tonight. Next, we have Aaron Willis. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Erin Willis and I live in West Juneau. Madam Mayor and Assembly members, I am one of 4 of the partners of iRide Alaska. We are asking to operate micro tours on the Pioneer Access. We chose this area as partners because it's the farthest away from any locals' homes and on an access that can easily accommodate many users at the same time. This access area is not a trail and was developed through a grant to create greater economic opportunities. We are locals who care about our community. We're a small company asking to operate 3 tours a day with 10 people each. So that would be 3 hours on the trail every 24 hours. A standard tourist bus holds 56 people. We are asking for just 30 people to have access to this Pioneer area. We have listened to the concerns of some of our fellow locals with a sincere desire to come up with a solution that satisfies everyone. With that in mind, we decided to close any tours on Sundays, so there would be local only use, and we limited our tour times on other days. E-bikes are quiet. There's plenty of room for locals and a small group of people on e-bikes. Our training will have common courtesy and show how to share the road with other users. Our tour would give locals and visitors alike an eco-friendly activity to try. It's a great activity to do with family and friends that are visiting Juneau, and locals and visitors alike are welcome to come do this, not just cruise ship. The per person fee that will be paid to the CBJ lands would help with upkeep of Pioneer. While there are some who oppose allowing tours in this area, the vast majority of Juneauites are fine with it. I've had people approach me to say what a great addition this would be to Juneau activities. Often you don't hear from the majority of people who are satisfied. Juneau is a tourist destination. While there may be a larger issue about the number of summer visitors, if only 1,000 people come to Juneau this summer, iRide would still be asking if we could bring 30 people a day to Pioneer to experience it on a bike. Although not as popular as the Valley, there are already tours that operate in North Douglas. The Rainforest Trail was developed specifically for tourist use. iRide Alaska will continue to be transparent in the details of this tour, and we welcome an open line of communication with the Assembly and with the locals alike. It's our goal to find common ground and work together to achieve a mutually beneficial solution. Thank you for listening.
Perfect timing. Any questions? Ms. Gladishevsky?
Ms. Willis, I have a question. The number of guests on each tour, I've seen different numbers in different documents. So you're now suggesting just 10 per tour?
Yep.
10 guests?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? What happens if we limited it to Monday through Friday? Could you do that?
Well, we'd probably not be able to do this because there just wouldn't be the money in it. We have to pay staff. We've bought our supplies. Insurance isn't cheap. All of that. So that probably would end the project.
Okay, and then my other question is, what if you quit at 5 p.m. and most people are getting off work?
So a tour was done, had all of our tours done by 5?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? I would have to talk with my partners. I think that the plan was to be gone by 7. Am I right about that? Off the trail by 7? And that would be 10 people. So not 30 at a time.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Reuben Willis. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Reuben Willis, live in West Juneau. I too am one of the iRide partners. It's good to be here and appreciate the time and that all of you put in, Madam Mayor and Assembly members. As you know, Pioneer Road would not even exist were it not for an economic grant for business and economic development in the area. At nearly $3 million, we would all love to have that kind of money to put into a trail, but it was put in place for the purpose of economic development, stimulating it in the area. The use of the road has the potential to create jobs and drive economic growth. By allowing iRide Alaska the use of Pioneer Road, the user fees generated would be available to the city to support, would not only support economic development, but also save all 32,255 Juneau taxpayers money. I do not believe it is fair to turn away user fees iRide will generate, effectively passing on the burden of approximately $20,000 a year to maintain that road onto all the other Juneau taxpayers. 95% who probably will never, if rarely, will see the and ever use Pioneer Road. I urge you to consider the long-term economic benefits of the commercial use of Pioneer Road that will come either now or later when the road is fully developed, and the cost savings to the public that will be achieved through user fees paid by iRide. By supporting the commercial use of Pioneer Road, you will be taking a proactive step toward economic development, job creation, supporting local businesses, and saving money. As we've heard tonight by Assemblymember Bryson and team, quote, every small amount adds up. And how our taxpayers' dollars spent is important. We are adding to that revenue base to help cover those costs. I'd like to address one final thing in closing. A TripAdvisor review that was posted. No tours have, and I repeat, no tours have been operated on Pioneer. A sister of one of the owners visiting from out of state participated in a family ride as part of our research. She thought she was doing us a favor by posting a review. Thank you for your consideration.
Any questions for Mr. Willis? You answered mine because I was going to ask you why you're already posting from September 2022 on TripAdvisor. So thank you for answering that. All right, thank you for your testimony. Oh, wait, Ms. Glaszewski.
Let me just ask about, the mayor asked about 5 PM. What about 6 PM?
Realize cruise ships come in a very narrow band, and in order to accommodate them, you have to cater to when they arrive and depart. And so that's the only time that we can do that. If we cut that off, we effectively eliminate a third, and the economic viability of operating it becomes very, very difficult.
Yep.
Ms. Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for that answer. We know that Fish Creek Road is also a road that can be used for e-bike tours. And I think when this first came up, I asked the question, what if you cut the tours on Pioneer Road to 2 a day? Could your third tour, your evening tour, your 4 o'clock tour be on Fish Creek Road so that you could do that? We have had requests from the public that that if at least when people are off work, there aren't any tours on the road and there aren't any tours on Saturday and Sunday. Perhaps would this enable you to still meet your bottom line because you've got the bikes if you could shift that last tour to a different location?
Mr. Wills.
Have not even explored Fish Creek. There is a very specific by TBMP of the some 140 trails that are available in Juneau for the public to use. There's approximately 16 that are for commercial use. And in those that are listed, Fish Creek isn't one of them. In fact, the Pioneer Road wasn't one of them, but we approached the city back in October. And the indication at that time was, we think this is a very doable thing. We could use the funds. This would be great. We see this as a positive thing. And it stretched on and on. They thought we needed to do a conditional use permit. We did all the application, paid the fees, and they came back after a couple of weeks and said, oh, no, never mind. You don't need to do that. We have to go this other route, which is fine. That's the process that we go through. But as you're very well aware, the economic viability of any business is to generate. And we think that last couple of hours of the day, maybe seeing 10 people go by is going to be very minimal, in my opinion.
How much time physically will people be on the trail?
Approximately an hour on the road. Yeah.
Any further questions?
So half hour in, half hour out.
And are you going to the very end of the trail?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, we have Lucas Johnson. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So my name's Lucas Johnson. I'm currently in West Juneau, but I'm from Idaho. So iRide has hired me to come up as an intern to help facilitate a fun experience for our guests. I was up in Alaska this last summer as well, and it was an incredible journey. It was something that impacted me. And going back to school, so I study rec therapy and business, I was able to share some of those experiences with the mental health clinic I work with. And it really impacted some people where they've come up as well. So I guess my purpose in coming up is just to thank you and Juneau for the opportunity to have people come up to share these beautiful views. I don't know, it's impactful to me. And I think there's so many things that sometimes we take for granted, even along Pioneer Road. The trees there, the eagles, the wildlife, that's something you just don't have anywhere else. And I think it's a real good opportunity to impact those around us. And as well for us to impact, hopefully, some of the city for the good. So I'd like to say thank you and Gunachish.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Chris King. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Chris King, and I live on Sunny Point, Lemon Creek area. Thank you for doing all that you do. You have very hard decisions to make, a lot, and we recognize that. And part of why we love living in Juneau is because everybody who lives here loves this place. And I'm not going to testify, I'm not going to talk for long, but I do want to add a couple things. We have been doing some more research out there in the area, and particularly this past few weeks, since the snow has been melted off, it's been beautiful, warm, sunny days. So we wanted to experience out there at different times of the day. And we had noticed that on a Friday evening, we went out there, there was only one person that we passed. Then we went Saturday and there was only 2 people. And so I just, on this moment where we're coming out of winter, you would think that the use would be at its highest and people would be eager to be out on the roads. And so I just thought that would be some interesting information that you could use. I know that there are times when there's more than that because I've seen more cars out there, but that's what we've ran into these past few weeks with this nice, beautiful weather. And the one last thing that I would just add is that I really hope that you can hear the silence of the tens of thousands of people that could have been here tonight that chose not to be. Because I know that if what we were proposing was a problem or a major issue, this room would be packed. And I think that silence often speaks the loudest. So I hope that their voices can be heard tonight as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for being here, Ms. King. Is there, how strict are you, I mean, is there going to be a strict schedule? So if for some reason someone doesn't want to be on the trail with e-bikes, they will know that you will only be there from 10:30 to 11:30, 1:30 to 2:30, whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
we have to stay on a strict schedule.
it's going to be a strict schedule and
we
people
can
will,
give that and provide that to
okay, so
anyone.
people could avoid it if they don't want to,
Absolutely.
if they don't want to share that at that same time. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. Any
Anything
other
further?
questions?
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, with that, we'll bring it back to, Ms.
Can we take a very short recess after Mr. Hannah?
Yes, Ms. Treem.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hannah, you were signed up, but I thought that was for your last one. Do you want to speak to this one too?
I do.
Okay,
Now.
go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, members of the Assembly. I'm up here to actually speak in favor of IRIDE's proposal. I think it was already stated pretty well that the West Douglas Pioneer Road, not the West Douglas Nature Trail, but the West Douglas Pioneer Road was built to spur economic development. It was built to spur access. It was built to spur more development out there. And this exactly fits that bill. It would be a disrespectful thing to not allow some use of this that's actually generating some income and actually encouraging more use out there. I'd also like to speak to the users. My wife and one of my daughters and I walked that trail mid-afternoon on a sunny weekend last summer. I think we ran into maybe a half a dozen people. I know probably a lot of people use it, but it's a long road. It's pretty well spread out. It's pretty well in pretty good shape right now. But if we talk about the fact that it probably is narrow in places, well, the more use it gets, the less it's going to get overgrown and the less maintenance we'll have to do to it. So I encourage more people to use it and keep the weeds beaten down. So with that, I'll let you go. I'm not going to ramble on, but I really hope you approve this and give it a year and see how it goes, because I just don't see it being that big a disruption to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hannah. Any questions for Mr. Hannah? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anybody else want to testify on the Pioneer Road? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the Assembly and Wahalkadock, I think it's to you, correct? Oh, wait, sorry. Let's take 5 minutes break. We'll bring us back to order for item 18.
Order.
Hey. And we still have Ms. Wall with us. Well, Hogdoc.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I move ordinance 2023-21 and ask for unanimous consent.
Thank you. Mr. Smith first and then Ms. Gladys.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I object for the purposes of amendment. It was in our red folder. Going to call it Amendment 1. I need to adjust the amendment just due to, anyway, an imprecise term I used in the amendment. So this amendment will amend section 4, other terms and conditions, by adding a new subsection D and renumbering the subsections to read, but the new subsection should read: the leaseholder shall promptly notify the director of any accident, injury, or claim relating to the allowed activity, including injuries of domestic animals. And that's just due to the public comments we got, which we did get not an insignificant amount. And that was a concern that I heard throughout, that people are going to be people are concerned about, impacts with dogs or whatever. So I just want those to be reported to the manager so we know how it went. But I think Ms. Lane wanted to.
Ms. Lane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to ask, is it notify the director or notify the manager?
Yes, sorry. It's notify the manager as well. We were working off of Parks and Rec
Thank you.
language. So anyway. Should I read that all the way back through? Very good. So this is adding a new subsection D. The leaseholder shall promptly notify the manager of any accident, injury, or claim related to the allowed activity, including injuries of domestic animals. And that is my amendment.
Is everybody clear on the amendment? Any objections? Seeing that the amendment 1 passes. Ms. Glaszewski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, I didn't get this to anybody because I just thought of it while we're speaking. There had been some unclarity about the number of guests, so I just want to put it in here. So I would have a new amendment 2 to add a new E below Mr. Smith's, and it would read: the lease shall allow no more than 10 guests on each of 3 tours a day.
Any questions on that? Everybody got that amendment? Ms. Wall, are you good? Okay, let's read it one more time.
The lease shall allow no more than 10 guests on each of 3 tours a day.
All right, we have heard the amendment number 2. Any objection? Seeing none, that amendment passes. Mr. Bryson. Do we have a?
Madam Mayor, I missed, I missed my window. I need to declare a potential conflict that I do have a bike shop that I do sell e-bikes, but it is a small percentage of my annual revenue. I don't do tour operations, but I do sell the product. And I don't believe that it'll, I don't believe I have a conflict, Madam Mayor. Neither did City Attorney Lane. Thank you.
Okay. Going back to the main motion as, oh wait, I'm sorry, Ms. Hale.
I have an objection
To
the main motion.
Okay, going back to the main motion as amended. Ms. Hale, you have an objection.
And may I, before I enter my objection, may I ask Mr. Manager a question?
Of course.
Which is, are non-commercial e-bikes allowed currently on the West Douglas Pioneer Road?
Mayor, I believe they are.
Is there a prohibition on motorized vehicles on the West Douglas Pioneer Road?
Mayor, I think I would.
Where's Mr. Schaaf when
But
you,
we would be looking for Mr. Schaaf, but I believe there is a prohibition on motorized.
I believe there is too. I think the sign there, so no.
There's a sign.
Okay.
Hang on, Mr. Bryson, do you know the answer to that?
I know that the classification of e-bikes where you still have to pedal are not considered motorized under the federal guidelines for trails.
Okay, Ms. Hale.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. Okay. That's not going to work.
Yeah, we're gonna have an echo.
And she was trained up.
Okay.
Okay. Yep, and we see Ms. Waller's hand up, but we're still on Ms. Hale.
Okay, thank you. I have thought long and hard about this, and I support the idea. I don't support the idea right now. I think that we have a responsibility as an assembly to weigh this in a much larger context. We have talked at this, as this assembly or at the committee of the whole, about the fact that our plans for areas that will have tourists and areas that won't have tourists, how those plans are out of date, and we need to make more plans. I didn't know that our applicants had been working on this since October, but it came to us very late, so that we have felt very rushed in trying to address this. This is normally something that I would support, but we are facing 1.6 million possible tourists this year, and we are facing a community that is worried and very exasperated with the amount of tourism everywhere in the community. As has been stated, half of people in Juneau think tourism should be concentrated and the other half think it should be dispersed. So I'm really actually worried about allowing this activity on the West Douglas Pioneer Road at this time. It may be in a year it would work. It may be if we could split it up so that there were 5 days a week and only 2 tours a day. Maybe that would be something that would be workable so that we could actually try it out. But as it is, we've heard from a lot of people who are worried about this activity impacting their own personal recreation. I think if you would bear with me for just a moment, I think the popularity of this new Pioneer Road really tells me that we need to really think hard about what we're providing for our Juneau residents. So many of our roads and trails are old mining roads and trails. And so we've taken advantage of those mining roads and trails that were built more than 100 years ago for our own recreational activities. But we haven't been thinking about, do we need to punch in some new trails for our residents? I think that I do feel that we should not permit this activity now, although I like the idea of it. I just really worry about our residents. I also would like to add that I feel that we need to deal with the name of the West Douglas Pioneer Road. Pioneer Road is a new road that is punched in initially before the main road can go in later, and that's what the meaning of a Pioneer Road is. But we've had the applicants referring to it as Pioneer, and the idea of Pioneer has really bad implications for many, many people in our community. And so I really think it's a mistake if we allow that road to be called Pioneer Road, because it's not about pioneers who again, that has some really bad implications. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, I have Ms. Wall, Ms. Hughes Scannies, and Mr. Bryson. Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll also object. Michelle or Ms. Hale said all of the things that I was thinking. I was just going to add a few additional comments. I do think these could be compatible uses, e-bikes and recreational uses on Pioneer Road. But I really think we need to be doing comprehensive planning beforehand. And I'm really happy that the management staff brought us a proposal to do commercial use planning for the community and update our trails plans so that we can do that holistically before we make decisions like this. I think if we move forward on this before we do that, we won't only upset many people who are looking to us to be proactive in how we're managing tourism. I think we could also just get a bunch more requests for commercial uses on this road before we've had that holistic discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I will keep this relatively brief based on the comments of Ms. Hale and Ms. Wall. They're coming from the same place, it sounds like. You know, I think a lot of what we do is we have to balance competing interests, and that's what makes these decisions difficult. There's rarely an easy decision. But I think this tour, while I appreciate the care and thought that was put into the tour, I think it is a really considerate, you know, it shows that it's locals who care about our community in the way that they've structured the tour. But I think it's a victim of timing. And while we're trying to figure out whether we consolidate tourism or disperse tourism throughout the community, you can't have that conversation and at the same time just continue to add in different tours. There has to be a bit of a pause while you figure that out. And we haven't figured that out yet. So I think it's not, for my opinion, it wouldn't be in the community's best interest to be adding this. I also want to say that the economic activity, it is not lost on me. I've had many a laugh with the lands manager at the, you know, what do you do when people get onto a piece of land that's supposed to be a road later and start enjoying it? You're going to have a hard time sweeping those people off, you know, especially once you start grooming it for skiing and anything else. And that's not lost on me. But for the time being, that is how it's being used. And the economic activity that the grant was for was to expand our road and to try to get to the backside of Douglas is how I view that. Less so to put tourism activities on this not trail. So I'm going to be a no.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Candies. Next, I have Mr. Bryson and then we'll hold it up. Your mic, put your mic.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think we could have had better applicants and a better tour at a better time. So I'm gonna have to disagree with that. The timing was off. We have the largest number of tour operators, or the largest number of cruise visitors that are going to ever visit us. And in response to that, the one tour that we're have to ask about that is going to operate in North Douglas as far away from the rest of everybody else as they can get, actually has people that live in Douglas running that. There's no scenario in the future where we're going to have Douglas people trying to propose a very small tour on North Douglas. That scenario is just not going to happen again. They've done everything that we've asked, everything, including taking a day away. What's the most profitable item? The very last one you sell. So the last tour that they get in at the end of the day is the most profitable one. The ones in the morning take care of all the overhead. So every time you go further on to another tour, get one more tour person. Every day we take away from them takes away not only profit, but overhead. It makes it harder to operate. You'd say the timing's bad because a lot of people are complaining about tourism. We did a tourism task force. We put the focus of the community onto tourism to try and come up with the answers. So I'm a little offended when some of the people say that we're not doing anything about tourism. We got a 5-ship limit sign this year, historic. at capping the number of cruise ships. And we're going to say that we're not doing anything about tourism. We absolutely are doing things as the city that all of Southeast Alaska looks to be the guiders of how we navigate this very difficult task. The reasons of it being congested and too many people, that's even more reasons for the tour. Not only does it generate more economic activity, but it gives another option for people. Right now, you can go on one of hundreds of bike rides that are already permitted in the community. This is 30 more as far away as they can get. We say no to this, and we are saying no to Juneau's economic future. We are saying no. Right now, we're at a crossroads. We have to do something with North Douglas, but that doesn't mean stop. If we try to stop now, everything's going to be a fight. If we figure out, okay, we're doing things in North Douglas, what's the best way to move forward? North Douglas just can't be a big fat no every topic that comes up. We have to figure out how to work with them. If we keep saying no to everything, we'll never get to a second crossing or a bench road that would desperately solve the situation. This is the perfect tour to let the community know that we are doing tourism correctly. Because of the size, Douglasites running this North Douglas tour, we're not going to get a better scenario. Thank you very much. I would urge the assembly to vote yes on this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Walhagadock.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the many emails we got on this and those who testified tonight. And I appreciate that we need to visit this and think about a plan. I also don't see coming up with a plan having to be bifurcated from allowing this to take place right now. I appreciate the folks who came forward and who are proposing this. It's a 1-year pilot as I see it. An opportunity to demonstrate to other tourism companies throughout Juneau what can be when local people who live here and care about this place start up a micro business like you are. And I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that you're actually considering the community's voice in this. No tours on Sunday, that's a big deal. Not every tourism company that comes in here and flies back out when the cruise ships leave considers our people and considers the community of Juneau. I also appreciate that we can revisit this in a year. We can say in a year's time, well, this didn't work out so well, or maybe it worked out great. And in consideration for what the plan might be for tourism down the road. And I have to say that this assembly doesn't move too fast when it comes to big plans like that. That we can take this into consideration for what we want. If it's successful, if it's something that takes into consideration the opinions of our community because it's being run by people in our community, then we should look at that as a successful pilot project that we should be adhering to our plan in the future. And so for that, I'll be supporting this tonight.
Thank you, Walhagadock. Ms. Glaszewski.
I'll go briefly, basically echoing what Walhagadock just said. This is for 1 year. If it was for longer, I would be concerned. It's 10 guests, 3 times a day. They go by fast. I use that road a lot. I live out in North Douglas. And these are local people. This is not, they did not fly in from someplace else to exploit the resource. They live here and they want to do a good product for locals. So I am nervous about it, however, so that's why the 1 year thing pushes me over the edge to yes. If it was 5 years, I wouldn't be supporting it. So I just, that's basically echoing what was just the previous speaker.
All right, thank you, Ms. Glaszewski. Mr. Smith, you want to chime in?
I think, Madam Mayor, this one's been tough. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a well thought out project. I think it's a well thought out tour. But I just have concerns and that we are not, I'm glad that the manager has put money in the budget to do a plan, but we have not decided where and if we want commercial tourism to be everywhere in our community. Turn off the microphone. And because of that, I opposed it since we've been voting on it, and I will continue to do so tonight. But it's tough because I appreciate what the folks the IRIDE team came up with. So it's hard for me to vote no, but I will be voting no.
All right, thank you, Mr. Smith. Looks like I'm last, and to be quite honest, I'm not exactly sure what I'm gonna do, so I'm glad I'm the last vote. Thank you for IRIDE. I think you've put together a great proposal, keeping in mind the community. But the other side up here tonight also has some good points. Are we really ready for this? I actually did my homework this weekend and I went hiking the Highway 101, we'll call it. And two things I learned. Number one, it starts pretty wide, but gets pretty narrow as you're walking. And number two, the hills were much taller and steeper than I remembered them. So my hamstrings are a little tight today. But anyway, I don't have much to say. I haven't quite decided how I'm voting on this. So Madam Clerk, will you call the vote?
Madam Mayor, for passage of ordinance 2023-21 as amended with amendments 1 and 2, Walal-Hida.
Yes.
Ms. Wall.
No.
Ms. Stream,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
No.
Ms. Hughes Candies,
No.
Ms. Hale,
No.
Mr. Bryson,
Yes.
Ms. Gladysevsky,
Yes.
and Mayor Weldon.
No.
Motion fails, 4 yeas, 5 nays.
Number 19, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is ordinance 2022-47, an ordinance repealing Title 49 provisions related to Wetland Review Board authority.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager.
At the regular Planning Commission meeting on March 14, 2023, the commission voted to recommend approval of an ordinance to repeal 4910-700 Wetlands Review Board. Board's wetland permitting authority has expired and the board has not met since 2018, and the board is no longer needed. I recommend you adopt this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I don't see any public signed up for this, so we will come back to the assembly. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move ordinance 2022-47 and ask for unanimous consent.
Ms. Stream.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just objecting for the purposes of a question, and I apologize for not doing my homework on this issue. Ms. Lane, is this a separate section of code from the stream setback issue? Okay. Nodding yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you have to speak.
Thank you. Sorry, Madam Mayor. Yes, this is unrelated. This is separate. Originally, it was supposed to travel with the stream ordinance. So, they would have made a little more sense together, but since it is its own standalone thing, we went ahead and it wasn't controversial, didn't have a lot of changes. So we went ahead and pushed it through.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I remove my objection.
All right. Any other objection? Seeing none, that motion passes. Moving on to new business. Mr. Manager or Mr. Deputy Manager? You, Mr. Manager.
Madam Mayor, we have Regulation 53 CBJ AC 09325 sand and gravel fees, Lemon Creek pricing. This regulation change will amend the rates and fees for the city and borough of Juneau sand and gravel pit pricing under the authority of 0160200, 5309015, and 5309325. This change will allow the sand and gravel pits to achieve cost neutral operation. The regulation will allow for annual adjustments to the established fee by the Consumer Price Index Urban Alaska, as reported by Alaska Department of Labor and Workforce Development. The implementation of the sand and gravel pricing regulation would increase sand and gravel fee schedule from $2.45 per ton to $4.90 per ton. Most impacted will be the city and borough of Juneau and state of Alaska because the CBJ only opens North Lemon Creek material source for public projects and does not sell those resources to the private sector. Lands Housing and Economic Development Committee reviewed this topic at the June 6, 2022 meeting, passed a motion of support for increasing the cost of sand and gravel. I recommend you approve this regulation.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Any questions on this before we go to the assembly? Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think at one point early in my assembly service, we looked at maybe allowing reduced cost or no cost gravel for housing projects or something. I know we probably can't amend these regulations here. Anyway, I mean, just as we look at ways to make housing happen, I mean, it is giving grants for gravel, like what's the right policy for that type of thing? Or anyway, maybe it's a lot to ask you right now, but anyway.
Mr. Manager.
Mayor, several years ago, housing developers approached the assembly about getting access to city gravel resources for private housing projects. And the idea died in committee after testimony from a competing private sector gravel supplier. We could revisit that. Lands Housing Economic Development Committee would probably be the right place, and there are a lot of issues associated there.
Thank you.
Ms. Glaszewski.
Just a quick question. What does gravel go for if you're not buying it from this pit?
Mayor, I'm not up to speed, but gravel in the private sector is considerably more than what the city charges itself in the state. In the city gravel pit, we're just looking to cover costs of managing the resource and complying with our environmental permits. The private sector gravel seller is also making a profit on theirs.
Any further questions? Okay, we'll bring it back to the assembly. Ms. Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the assembly approve regulation 53 CBJ AC 09.325, and I ask for unanimous consent.
Any objection? Seeing none, that regulation passes. Bring Ms. Bryson.
Madam Mayor, could I do a motion for reconsideration on that I Ride Alaska? Have I already passed my time of motion of reconsideration for whatever the next meeting?
Lane, but I don't believe you have.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So it is if it's a motion for immediate consideration, then it would be a revote tonight, or you could give notice of reconsideration, to which it would be taken up at the next meeting.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to give notice of reconsideration at the next regular assembly meeting on the I Ride Alaska ordinance.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Does anybody have any questions on that? We usually don't do that, so any questions? Okay. All right, that brings us to our staff report. Mr. Watt. We seem to have a memo in our packet.
Mayor, there's a memo in your packet, a short memo from myself. My time with CBJ is getting shorter. I've worked for the borough for, well, around 30 years now by calendar, and I'm submitting my resignation, which I would like to be effective at the end of September. I've been city manager for just over 7 years now, which is kind of a surprise. It's been quite a time, quite interesting, quite rewarding, quite fun. And I think now is time for the assembly to contemplate a hiring process for the next city manager. And I thank you for all of your support during the last 7 and 30 years.
Yeah. Any objection? Well said. Well done, Mr. Smith. We will save our kudos and accolades for another day, but I just wanted to point out, if you were in the private sector, 8 jobs, different jobs in 30 years is kind of low bar. That you change jobs about every 3.5 years. But anyway, we thank you for your service and we'll talk about that more. So that brings me to my mayor's report. And all I will talk about tonight is, because of the memo in the packet, I will nominate a hiring process committee. And their goal is to go through the process of the how are we going to go about hiring a new city manager with Mr. Hargraves and probably Mr. Watt's input, and Mr. Barr's also. And also what we're going to do for advertising to get it out as far as possible. So it'll be led by Ms. Wall, and the other committee members will be Ms. Hale, Ms. Hughes Candies, and Mr. Bryson. So thank you guys all for volunteering. And that's really all I have, other than I would encourage you to walk the Highway 101. And we will start with Ms. Gladszewski, Committee of the Whole.
We were all at the last committee of the whole meeting and we talked about the things we did talk about, which I don't know what they are. And we have a committee of the whole meeting next Monday.
Thank you for that short report. Ms. Treem on finance, busy time of the year for finance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mine won't be quite as short. So we have had 2 meetings in our budget process so far. The first, just an overview of our finances. And last week we heard from the school district and Eagle Crest. We accepted the budget for Eagle Crest that was in the manager's proposed budget, and we accepted $128,000 increment above that. We did not take action on the school district, but don't fret, that's coming back to us. This week we have the airport and the hospital, and those are the only 2 presentations and only 2 decisions we'll have to make. Well, we don't have to make, we should make on Wednesday. I do want to point out that in the packet there is, as an info item only, the current pending list. Mr. Rogers has left the room, so I'm going to call it the pending list. As it stands, the things that are things like community requests that we usually put on those pending lists, there's information in here now. So if you could take a look at that, and just if there's information that you want on those, if you could try to ask Ms. Spiegel or Mr. Rogers those questions in advance, if you have them in advance, that would probably make things move smoother. We've done a lot of back and forth on what that process should be, and what we are going to do is have these requesters are scheduled to come to the finance committee and they have 10 minutes to give presentations, and that will be on May 3rd that those presentations will happen. So if you have questions that are not answered in the materials in this packet that you want to make sure are answered, that gives you some time to either ask the requesters or send those questions to Mr. Rogers and Ms. Spiegel. I think that's all for now. See you guys on Wednesday.
Thank you, Ms. Treem. Public Works, Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Public Works met and we went over a SCADA transfer that I believe we've already passed. We talked about the airport EV stations and the Centennial Ball renovations and the Basin Road Trestle Bridge that is out. On that same week, we had the Talking Trash work session that brought members of the collections and post collections part of the waste stream together with the assembly, went down short-term, medium-term, and long-term questions. One of the pieces of information that came from that is that it might be beneficial to have a material study so that we know the exact makeup of our waste stream. And I was going to request that that be added to our pending list, a potential study. And I've chatted with Director Kester and Deputy Director Koch at Public Works to talk about what some potential next steps. There is no easy answer out of our dump. We can either expand a little bit or look at a new dump, but all other strategies right now will be what we don't put into the dump will extend the life of our existing dump. I was hoping for a magic bullet, an incinerator answer, something like that. And unfortunately down south, incineration is bad. They don't like it because they have plenty of room to put the trash. So no technology advancements have been made in that area. Our answer is, do we make the dump bigger or do we put it into do we start planning a second dump? And so at least knowing the material that we're putting in there might give us some answers on how we can prolong our existing landfill. And I'm sorry that I did not bring back better information than that. That's my time for Public Works and Facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Housing and Economic Development, Mrs. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, also known as lands. Which you left off.
Land.
The Lands, Housing and Economic Development Committee met on April 3rd. And we discussed, we didn't have any action items. We got a lot of great staff reports. We got an update on what is happening with Telephone Hill, which you will all be kept in the loop, but Mr. Blydorn was just letting us know where we are currently. We got an update on the 35-mile off-road vehicle park and how that is progressing. And then our normal status update on how land use code revisions are coming along. And that was generously chaired by Mr. Bryson for me because I was in Anchorage and was able to Zoom in. Our next meeting date will be April 24th.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Candies, and Human Resources, Mr. Smith.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. We met just earlier tonight. We went over questions that we're going to ask the new PRAC applicants to respond to. We heard a presentation by members from the Alaska AIDS Assistance Association and State Public Health on harm reduction and other prevention strategies in Juneau. As an FYI, we do have 20 applicants for the PRAC, the new PRAC, some of them which are just, past applicants who may not be interested this year, but nonetheless, good to have a good group to choose from. And that's what I had for our Human Resources meeting. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And now it's liaison reports and comments or concerns. Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a Docks and Harbors meeting. Jeremy Norbert was named Employee of the Quarter. They discussed the Hanson Gress property, boat washing at the Auk Bay loading facility is apparently a huge deal. So we might hear about that, and it discussed locked harbors. I also attended a North Douglas Neighborhood Association meeting where I essentially heard testimony about how the North Douglas neighborhoods were responding to the first screening of the second crossing. And so I was chatting with those guys for an evening. That's all that I have for you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will start by thanking the Folk Fest Board of Directors for another wonderful year of music and community gathering, in addition to bringing economic activity to our community with all our visitors in town. They did a great job working around centennials being renovated and got creative this year with venue and had to deal with volcanic ash stopping the guest artists from coming and all kinds of fun, but they did a great job of pulling it off and the community came out in great numbers to JD and the Jack, and it was great to see everybody. The Eagle Crest Board of Directors met on Thursday, April 6th, and the majority of what we discussed there was the budget request, which you saw in our last finance meeting. And Mr. Scanlon just giving a kind of preview of the year in wrap. And I think the only thing that happened after that Board of Directors meeting was the slush cup, which some of you attended on a sunny day. And then you saw the ordinance that was introduced tonight concerning the gondola and getting that back on track. So stay tuned for more gondola or take a good look at that and get your questions answered before the next assembly meeting. The Juneau Chamber of Commerce met on April 12th at 2:30, and you received, I think on Wednesday, sometime this week, on the 14th, their letter, which is just addressing their general thoughts and concerns and opinions regarding the budget, mostly centered around mill rate and how the city should approach the process for a new city hall. So take a look at that. And then just one other comment. It sounds like they have reopened testimony, public testimony, that is, on Senate Bill 52, which is an increase to the BSA. So if you haven't gotten a chance to testify and you would like to testify, that would be good. And it is going to be at 1:30 tomorrow, I believe, pretty short notice. And you can call in and testify at 907-586-9085 if you want to weigh in on increasing the BSA.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Gannis. Ms. Treem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I feel like I've done a lot of things since the last time we were all here in this configuration. I attended the JEDC meeting in place of Madam Mayor, and the most important thing I have to report from that meeting is that the Maritime Festival will be on May 6th. And they did a lot of other important work as a board during that meeting, but I think that's the main takeaway for us is Maritime Festival is the 6th. The other work they're doing, I'm sure will come to us as it goes through its process. I did attend the Slush Cup. It was awesome. Don't know how they pulled off that amazing weather, but it was so fun to watch. So congratulations to everybody who made it across. Although the people who don't make it across are way more entertaining and fun. His pond was short, so maybe when we have that, when we have that joint meeting with the Eagle Crest board, let's put that on the agenda. Let's see what else. So Bartlett, I actually do have some important things to report from the Bartlett board. So you might not have noticed tonight, but there was a transfer in our consent agenda that moves money from the emergency department renovation project to a different project, which I am totally blanking on at the moment. But this was approved by the board, although I do want to report it wasn't, a unanimous decision. There was discussion about it, but that was something the board approved. Another topic the board is considering as they work on their budget and the deficits that they're facing is what to do with the PCR testing machine that we directed them to buy during the pandemic. I think the main issue, I believe, is that it comes with a maintenance contract that they have to keep paying. So they will be here on Wednesday, and I think this is germane to the budget discussion. So look for that to be one of the topics we discuss on Wednesday. And there's some other kind of issues bubbling in the background about governance that I will absolutely report when there's more concrete things to report, but the theme is I think we just need more communication from and to that board about what the assembly wants to see them do and focus on. Let's see, I also got to attend Mr. Gottschalk's goodbye party, and I almost don't want to tell you guys because this is such a good tip, but the law department throws excellent soirees with, they bring in lots of food, and you should try to attend some of those. Although unfortunately, Mr. Gotchek is gone, and it was very sad to see him go, but he'll be back. Let's see. And finally, I attended the Chamber's lunch on childcare, which was really nothing we don't know already, but just kind of drives home the fact that that is also a need in our community and in the state and the country. And there's probably ways that we can work on that. And I'm sure Mr. Barr, when he gets appointed to the governor's task force, will fix everything for us. So that's my report.
Thank you, Ms. Trim, and I also am putting pressure on Mr. Barr. Wahaga.
Yeah, the Planning Commission Committee of the Whole had a really robust discussion about Title 49, the severe avalanche area map and severe landslide map. And there was a lot of really great questions, and they almost ran over their time to gavel in for the actual meeting itself that happened at 7 p.m. that same night. They approved a flood zone exemption permit renewal for bathrooms at Statter Harbor, and that was essentially it for the Planning Commission. I did miss the last Systemic Racism Review Committee, but we moved on that tonight. Hopefully I can make the next one. It's hard when it's during the lunch hour. Most of my meetings run right through it. And just a reminder, we're knee deep in Moana Nui Akea planning. June 10th through the 15th. The 10th will be the welcoming ceremony for the Hawaiians and the Va'a that's going to be arriving here in Juneau. The 11th through the 14th will be an Indigenous education exchange. We'll have the president of University of Hawaii Manoa, as well as delegation from throughout the Pacific to include Taiwan, Tahiti, New Zealand, as well as Micronesia, and of course Hawaii. So we're going to have international guests and dignitaries joining us for a lot of that. And if you can't make any of that, June 15th is the global launch, where the worldwide news will be broadcasting a lot of what's taking place here in Juneau. So big plan, big party, big send off in the right way. Just want to note that they're circumnavigating the Pacific using nothing but traditional navigation. And the Pacific journey itself is longer than when they circumnavigated the entire globe. That's how big the Pacific is. So it's going to be an awesome send off for them. And I'm thankful that they chose Juneau, Alaska to acknowledge our longstanding relationship between the Hawaiians and the Haida and Tlingit and Tsimshian people of Southeast. Tribal Assembly kicks off on Wednesday. I am a tribal delegate with my other hat on, so I'll be attending those meetings. If you get a chance to come in and listen, I hope you do. And then Saturday, don't forget totem dedication from the Alaska Heritage Institute. I believe that invitation already went out to all of us. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Wahaga. And unfortunately, I'll be out of town, but Ms. Glaszewski is going to speak at the totem dedication. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll keep it short. The PRAC met 2 weeks ago, got an update on the 35-mile off-highway vehicle park, which is progressing along, and that's really exciting. That, there was a comment made just that while it's a great development, it's like there are many different type of off-highway vehicle users, and just for what the different folks want. I mean, we have to just keep in mind that not anyone who does off-highway vehicle wants, that park isn't going to satisfy them. Like motocross, for instance, it's not going to satisfy motocross users, but nonetheless, a big step forward in providing some facilities for off-highway vehicle folks in our community. The only other thing I would maybe add is that the U.S. Coast Guard Band is playing this Saturday night, and tickets are free, and it's at Thunder Mountain High School, 7 p.m. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And if you want to know how to get to that Coast Guard website, just let me know. I've already reserved mine. Pretty excited. The trombone is speaking. The Juneau Commission on Aging met on the 21st of March. Talked about a lot because the Juneau Commission on Aging always talks about a lot. But one thing that came up was they were concerned about the assessed value and the potential impact in terms of property taxes on seniors, and they were talking about a freeze. I explained that there is a property tax hardship exemption for people that actually qualify for that. So I'm going to do a little bit of analysis for them, putting the sales tax rebate form side by side with the property tax exemption hardship form, and seeing if there is any way. Those are really, really, really onerous forms to fill out for senior citizens who are very poor. It's really a burden. So I'm going to look at those two side by side and see if there's some kind of efficiencies that we can gain at the city. So that's what I'm kind of pushing to them, is rather than a freeze, which doesn't make sense, there actually is a vehicle. And if we need to look further at the vehicle that does exist, we can do that. So I'll bring that to them, and then I'll also probably bring it to Mr. Rogers and maybe to the Finance Committee. I'd really like us to take a look at that. Airport Board met on the 13th. We talked a little bit. They're working on the parking lot this summer, which is going to reduce the number of parking spaces a lot, but they have to be done with that parking lot this summer. And so they have to be done before the snow flies, basically. So expect a really nice parking lot next winter and a lot of disruption until then. We talked about the money, that $660,000 that had been had moved from the airport to the assembly to pay their GO bond. I'll talk to Ms. Treem about that. We'll talk about that on Wednesday further. So that's probably it for that. Today, the Joint School Board Assembly Facility Committee met. I again want to thank Ms. Kester for doing an extraordinary job putting together the agenda. We really did pre-meetings that worked really well. We have some goals for that committee, and I'll just try to summarize those really quickly. One is to forward a prioritized plan for facilities major maintenance to the assembly and the school board, so that CBJ is making the most strategic investments. It's a big goal, but I really want to do that. And then also forward a strategy for addressing declining enrollment. And that includes kind of a matrix or a framework to aid in the understanding of the funding formula that Mr. Rogers has talked to us about, has provided a memo to the Finance Committee. But sitting that side by side, looking at operational expenses as well as capital expenditures and how to look at those together to better make decisions. And then finally, trying to establish a framework for future joint assembly school board facilities committee meetings, because the charter says, okay, you guys meet together and figure out a recommendation, and that's all the charter says. And so the charter doesn't give us much to operate with, and I think that provides a big challenge. There are two distinct bodies. The school board is an elected body and the assembly is an elected body. And the assembly often acts like we're the boss of the school board, but we're not the boss of the school board. We hold the purse strings. So it's just really some really interesting context. So that's going well. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Hale, and I apologize, Ms. Wall, you weren't here, so I skipped right by you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My report's getting shorter and shorter as we go here. I just had two things to add on to what fellow assembly members already reported on. In addition to an opportunity to testify on increasing BSA funding tomorrow, there's also going to be a rally on Thursday at the Capitol on that same topic. And the other thing, Mr. Bryson can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there is a Stockton Harbor's public meeting tomorrow at the Yacht Club tomorrow night about their potential 9% rate increase. And I just thought people would be interested in that, because that usually trickles to us at some point. So should be interesting to see what happened there. That's all for me.
All right, thank you, Ms. Wall. Ms. Glaszewski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Very short report for me. I missed all the meetings, including the finance meeting. I've been in Quincy, Illinois, helping my sister. My brother-in-law passed away unexpectedly, so I have no meeting reports. I do have one question. Mr. Bryson brought it up and it made me wonder, and I don't need the answer, but the second crossing, which, the North Douglas crossing, which ones are still in contention? And I asked this question at a meeting of a advisory group that I'm on. Who is making the decision? I don't know the answer to that. And like on which route gets selected. It's unclear to me. I don't need the answer now. I want you to find out and tell me for sure, because DOT, that committee did not have the answer. You don't, no, thank you.
Ms. Kester seems to know the answer, or at least she's going to make a good stab at it.
I do have an answer. So right now, the Pell study, which is a DOT-led study that Dow Engineering is the consultant on, is going through the screening process, eliminating from the 14 alternatives through level 1 screening. And level 1 screening is a criteria that has been established with all their public process. And so they have worked through eliminating, they don't have a final number of options, but they are working through that process and plan to present it. I believe in the near future. I've asked for that to be an agenda item at the 24th PWFC committee meeting. So they're working through kind of the top options right now and don't have a final decision. But that decision basically is made by DOT and Dow Engineering using the screening criteria that's been established.
That's not. So why don't we just talk some other time? Because I don't want to hold everybody up, because I asked that question. I got a different answer, and let's talk afterwards.
Okay, and then you guys can share it with the group. All right. Anything further so far? Okay, we were remiss and we missed National Telecommuters Day week last week. So I apologize to all our dispatchers. We love you dearly. We just were behind the 8 ball on that one, and I found out about it too late to do a proclamation for them. And the other thing I have is happy birthday, Senator Jesse Keel. So continuation of public participation. We have one member of the public. Do you wish to speak on non-agenda items? He does not. So with that, we are adjourned.
Hey.